This is a tutorial on the 2024 residential listing agreement. This is a universal form that can be used in any state. It's only 3 pages, but it covers all the fundamentals to be a professional grade form. I will link to it in the description. We also have some updates to the commission section regarding the implications of the Sitzer Burnett verdict and also the Gibson versus Nar and others current complaint. So I have some sample information here and I'll jump right into it to show you how to fill out this form. So we start by putting the name of the seller or sellers here. Then we put the name of the brokerage, not the individual agent or the individual broker, but instead the name of the entity or brokerage for the property address. And we put the full address of the property, the assessor's parcel number or the county tax ID for property taxes, which can be found on a property tax bill. It can be found by asking the homeowner, going on the county assessor's website. If you have access to a tax record database, you'll see it there. If not, all else fails, leave it blank. It's nice to have, but it's not 100% necessary. It's just another identifying factor, and it's more important on the purchase agreement. All right, county, put that in. Listing agreement, start and end date. Very important that you have a start and finish date. Sometimes I see this form turned in without a end date because the listing agent is very friendly with the seller, or it's a relative, or it's a casual relationship. The point is, it cannot be. You must have both because it makes this form potentially unenforceable. In theory, if a seller contested this form and there wasn't a definitive start and finish date, they could nullify this form. It would not be enforceable. All right, compensation for broker services. Here's the fun part. Now, if you followed the Sitzer Burnett verdict and this new complaint, to very briefly summarize, and there's plenty of information out there, but it alleges that agents are inflated seller commissions to compensate for the buyer's broker commission, and that different policies instituted by the association and brokers upheld this policy of requiring agents to offer a cooperating broker compensation to market a property, thereby incentivizing agents to ask for an inflated commission from the seller. Now, you don't have to agree with it. I don't, but that's not the point. The point is that the jury was convinced. They found in favor of the plaintiff. This is going to change the landscape going forward for how the listing agreement will look and possibly even how real estate practice is done. So what we're doing is we're deflating the argument that was used by putting in an advisory and some other verbiage that I'll show you here. So the advisory says, commission rates are entirely negotiable between the client and broker. So that just means there's nothing fixed by law. Yes, you've heard about 5 and 6%, but it's all negotiable. It can be anything. It can be 5%, it can be 10%, it can be 1%, whatever. You are not required to any sort of standardized or fixed rate. That's what this says. Sellers have no obligation to include compensation for a buyer's broker in the commission. It spells it out right there. You have no obligation. You are not required to. It's up to you if you do. All right. Now, we are going to do this listing based on a 5% listing where we're offering 2.5% to the buyer's agent because despite the verdict, despite potential changes in the future, nothing has considerably changed presently. I went on the MLS yesterday. I looked at over 1,000 listings. No one's offering 0%. Nothing has changed radically overnight. So we're putting 5% here. That's a 5% listing that we're charging. Now you can add a fee with it. And you check this box. You could put in like a $500 broker compliance fee. Okay? If you do this at one of our brokerages, we credit to the agent. It'll offset any sort of cost you have for a transaction coordinator or whatever. I mean, you could put $400 for a transaction coordinator. You can call it whatever you want. Some agents do this. Some agents don't. I recommend it. It's personal preference. Now, let's say you don't want to do a percentage. You just do a flat fee. Let's delete this for a second. Let me just show you. You're doing a $10,000 listing. Right there. That's it. If check, $10,000. Okay. Erase this. Go back to our 5% because that's what we're using for this example. And that's it. So this section right here, lines 12 through 16, that's where you're going to determine what you're charging the gross commission. Now, starting in line 17 for the rest of this paragraph, these are all here to protect you. What happens if your listing expires and the next day a buyer that came in to your open house last week makes an offer? Well, you're protected for 90 days. If you do nothing here, you're protected. This form has these built-in protections for you. If the seller sabotages an escrow, then you're protected. You're entitled to your compensation. It's all right here. I highly recommend reading it. The 90 days that protects you after expiration, you can shorten or lengthen it here if you want, but you can just leave it default. 90 is a good number. All right, so you're protected here. I recommend reading that. I won't bore you by reading you text online that you could read yourself. Now, here's another little plot twist. Since this attack on the agency profession is hinged upon agents charging the seller for a buyer's broker commission, we don't need to do that. So we're going to say there's a seller election of broker cooperation. It's not even that we're instructing, because part of the reason is that the standard forms in the past, they really streamlined the assumption that there'd be a buyer's broker and a cooperating broker compensation. And that was part of it. It looks bad. So if you show that to a jury, look, in these agreements, it's automatically implicated that the seller is going to pay the cooperating fee, and it even shows how much of the commission they need to pay. And rather than streamline that, we're going to take a step back and say, no, it's you who chooses to pay a cooperating broker compensation. We don't have to. Now, we charge whatever we want here. If this election isn't done down here, this whole 5% goes to you. You don't have to offer anything. Now, it's incumbent upon the agent to explain, hey, let me show you the MLS. If I pull up 100 listings on the MLS, they're all offering cooperating broker compensation. You don't have to. If you don't, you may not be as desirable as to the ones that do. I mean, you have to have a conversation with your client about the consequences of every decision they make. If they pay you $500 to list their home, you have to tell them, I won't do something that won't even cover my gas for the entire escrow. You have to have these conversations where you instruct people as a reasonable adult. This is common for any agent of any experience level. Set boundaries and explain to them, hey, seller, you can choose whatever you want. Here are the consequences of your choice. If you do this, agents aren't going to do that. You have to educate them as to the consequences of their decisions. Here we're saying you have to, if you want us to offer a cooperating broker compensation, you need to elect broker cooperation. That means you have to check the box. Seller instructs the listing broker to cooperate with other brokers and offer a cooperating broker compensation. The seller's electing, the seller is instructing you. You're not instructing the seller. You're not saying, hey, seller, you need to do this. And then 3 years later, the seller says, hey, he told me I needed to do this. And now I'm suing him, because that's really that's part of what happened with this Sitzer Burnett trial. And so we're saying, no. We are a professional consultant. You tell us what you want to do. We will get your home sold, but you tell us if you want us to offer another party compensation. If they do, you check this box. The seller designates a percentage. We're doing the 2.5% of 5%. We're doing just like before this verdict, just like before everyone started rethinking this whole thing. We're doing the 5% listing, 2.5% to the buyer's broker, and it's being deducted from the gross compensation. I can't highlight that. There we are. From the gross compensation stated above. So if someone asks you, if someone says, yes, I want you to give, I'll pay 5%, you give 2.5% to the buyer's broker, you go, great. Well, look, it's deducted. Sometimes I see agents make this mistake. They write 2.5% up here, then they write 2.5% down there, and I'm saying, well, you've made $0 because everything you're charging here, this is an invoice up here. You're charging this, and you're making a pledge to spend this much of what you charge. Well, if this number matches this number, you get 0 because you've just pledged everything you charge. You charge the gross number here, and then this is what you're going to pay a cooperating broker. Or let's say we're doing the $10,000 up here we did before, and you want to pay $5,000. For flat fees, you just put it over here. That's where the flat fee goes. Flat fee, cooperating broker, or buyer agent compensation. Since we're doing 2.5, this is what it looks like. You do 5%, 2.5, 2.5. This is what it looks like. 5% here. Check this box. Put 2.5 here. Now, important and beneficial for you. We're saying that this broker compensation will be posted on the MLS and anywhere we see fit. What happens if there's no buyer broker? Well, some agents allow dual agency, some don't. But the point is that it doesn't matter because we're charging this fee. You want to hire this company up here to sell your property? This is the fee we're charging. Do you want us to offer some of that to another? Then we put it here. Now remember, you as the agent going to listing appointment, you're not going to allow them to do something ridiculous where they go, yeah, I'm going to put 2.5 here and only 3 up here and you get 0.5%. You go, no. I'm sorry, but I won't work for that little. That's not how, and then that's where you need to be able to tell them what value you bring to the table. And that's part of just you as a professional showing up. You have to, if you don't know how to explain to someone what your value is, then that's square one. You need to go and figure that out first before you even go to a listing appointment. But the point is that you have control because they can say something crazy here. And you can say, no, you're not, it's all negotiable, but you're asking me, this is what I charge, okay? That's it. So you set your own floor, you set your own boundaries. All right, so we put this in here. Now, if there's no cooperating broker, then the listing broker shall earn the entire compensation for broker services. That means if you're a dual agent, you get it all. It means if the buyer shows up and is unrepresented, you still get it all. This is only if there's another broker involved. There's no other broker involved, you keep everything up here. That's how it works. All right. If you have questions about this, leave a comment because I've put a tremendous amount of thought into this form, and as someone that has been party to thousands of transactions. All right, multiple listing service advisory. Well, you have to tell them what the MLS is, what the purpose is. You get the idea. Both parties initial. We move on to page 2. Does the seller want to be removed from the MLS? So again, this creates one of those questions where if a seller says I don't want to be on the MLS, or in my opinion a disreputable agent says don't go on the MLS because they try to do a pocket listing or something, that's not good. So the exclusion from the MLS needs to be something that's initialed, excuse me, by the seller. So the seller can't come back and say that they didn't give explicit authorization to be excluded. A seller should be in the MLS, period. Should be in a MLS or multiple MLSs or whatever, but a seller gets the most value and benefit by getting as much exposure to the public as possible. And MLSs are that vehicle in the present. All right, marketing. By default, listing brokers given authorization to put a key box and a for sale sign. Seller doesn't like it, they need to opt out here. But by default, you get authorization. Dispute resolution, something goes wrong, okay? Mediation, first course of action. So the parties can do this without going to pricey litigation if something goes wrong. Some other advisories here, I recommend reading it, just protections, additional provisions. Was there something that was not mentioned that you want to add to the contract? Put it in here. You can put whatever you want here. This is just entirely free space. Sellers are going to fill this out. Sellers are going to sign. You're going to put the name of the brokerage license number, your name, your signature, your license number, address for your brokerage, not your home address or your personal office, but the brokerage address. And that's it. It's just 3 pages, but it covers everything. And given that we're entering 2024, we need to have this new verbiage that deflates the argument that can be made by an opportunistic lawyer that points blame at agents for simply doing what the industry organically evolved into over decades. If you have any questions, please leave a comment. Thank you for watching.